supporter, a coach, an ear, a shoulder to all of the nonprofits in our region, and providing that extra support that we have sort of heard from grant partners that they want outside of, the monetary and financial support. So Catchafire is now coming under my purview. Megan Donovan is on the call with us today, but I will be your new point of contact. My contact information is going to be at the end of this presentation, which I will also share in a follow-up email. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I have about 8 years of experience working on the nonprofit side of things. I'm new to the philanthropic side, but I hope that means that I am, well equipped to understand the challenges, the joys, and everything in between of working in the nonprofit space and being able to provide really targeted support to you all. And genuinely, once you get my contact information, feel free to reach out to me anytime about anything. So for today's agenda, we are going to go over the foundation's sort of focus and commitment on Catchafire. Then we'll take a look at some numbers around cohort 4, your demographic breakdown, as well as some of the progress that you've made in the past 5 months. We will hop into we'll have a quick poll after that, and then we'll hop into a panel discussion with 4 of our wonderful Catchafire users, and hopefully you can, gain some inspiration, some troubleshooting from your fellow, nonprofits and Catchafire users. We'll have time for questions for them or for me or for anybody at the end. And if we do have extra time towards the end, we will do a walkthrough, a spotlight of a couple of features within Catchafire that will be referenced in the panel, but we can help folks navigate how to use them effectively. I'll pause here. Are there any questions before we jump in or thoughts? Great. Let's go. So our focus and commitment. Through Catchafire, which we're now in our 4th year at the foundation, we really wanted to focus this sort of extra capacity building support on organizations that are small, newer, Black and Alana led, rural serving, and we really see this as a way to align with our own goals and mission at the foundation, and ensuring that, smaller organizations, Black Alana-led organizations that may have historically not had access to this sort of capacity building will now be able to get really great expertise and support through the Catchafire program. And we are happy to say that you all are a great reflection of sort of the organizations that we are hoping will benefit the most from the Catchafire program. About 35% of you are rural serving. About 30% have POC leadership or a significant number of staff that are people of color. Some new folks in the room, about half of you have been operating for less than 5 years. I think the biggest category that most folks fall into is the size of the staff. Some folks are mostly, working with volunteers and have minimal number of paid staff. And about half of you are also operating with under $250K in your budget. So really excited to have you all in the room with us. We'll be hearing a bit more from you in a moment, but onward to the progress that you've made. So there are about 100 folks or 100 organizations that are using Catchafire right now. And in the past sort of 5 months since this cohort launched in October, we have seen about 30% of folks actually completing projects, which is amazing. And from those, we had about 63 matches with volunteers. There were almost 400 volunteer applications, nearly 1,000 hours donated. This was as of last week, so I think the number is a little higher today. And $177,000 saved by your organizations through Catchafire. And to us, this really speaks to the value of the program and the value of, the volunteer hours that are helping you problem solve. I think what we're seeing across all 4 cohorts is that a lot of translation, transcription services, a lot of design services, website, graphic design, annual reports, infographics, really some of those projects that are completable within a couple of months, and getting some support that you may not have with, graphic designers on your team or graphic design expertise, translation, transcription as well. So there are many more things that you can do on Catchafire, and we'll be talking about some of them today. But we also want to note that we would love for this number to be, 100% of usage, 90 organizations with completed projects. And so we wanted to take a moment to reflect and capture sort of where folks might be coming up against some barriers or some challenges with using Catchafire. So Megan is going to launch a quick poll. And if you are not currently facing challenges with Catchafire, feel free to respond. This is not required. You don't have to respond, but feel free to respond with something that you maybe were struggling with. And then we'll move into the panel discussion, where we will be able to address some of these common challenges and barriers and hear directly from folks who overcame them to make the most of Catchafire. So please submit your answers. You should see the poll pop up on your screen. I'll read through them quickly though as well. Some things that we've heard folks say is that they just haven't found the right project yet that's going to be a good fit for Catchafire. Other teams are saying that, they don't really get Catchafire. They don't really get what it's for, how to use it, maybe haven't even had a chance to log in yet, and navigate through, hosting a project, matching with a volunteer. Some folks have made it onto the platform and just see all of these buttons and options and are overwhelmed, and it's just a bit too much. Where do I begin? There's a million capacity building projects I could use. Which one should I start with? What's going to be the best use of my time on Catchafire? Some people have said that, it's a bit of a job to take on a volunteer and to manage them in order to make sure that a project is completed at the quality that you want it to be completed at, in alignment with your organization, and you may not just have the capacity to take on the management of that project or a volunteer. Some people maybe tried Catchafire and struggled with it, maybe didn't find it as useful as you hoped. And others just haven't had a chance to even get to it yet. It's been a busy season. We're just getting into the new year. So let us know what you're feeling. Okay, this is really helpful. So we're seeing that most folks are struggling with the capacity or time to manage another volunteer. And I think a couple of our panelists are going to be able to speak to that today. But also about 12% falling along the lines of unclear how to use the platform, not sure where to start, and haven't really had time to try it out yet. So this is really helpful information and data for us that we'll also take back, and I will, in my follow-ups with folks, try to help you address some of these things too. But thank you for sharing. Wonderful. So we're moving on to our panel discussion, and I am very happy to introduce our 4 panelists today who are in the room with us. We have Anna Pillow, the Executive Director of the Arts Center in Orange. We have Yvonnia Bryant, Development and Comms Coordinator at the Community Investment Collaborative. We have Nicole Hawker, founder of Heart and Soul Fitness, and Brenda Patterson, co-founder and director of music at the Victory Hall Opera. I'm going to give each of them a chance to, take a minute or so, introduce themselves more deeply, and share a bit more about their organizations and in what ways they've been able to use and leverage Catchafire. And we will start with Anna.
Hi.
Hi, Anna.
How's everybody doing? Well, Catchafire has been very helpful for us, and it's something that I'm so happy that I can be here to speak a little bit about today. We are an arts organization. I will say right off the bat, though, that one of the things that enabled us to really take advantage is that we already work with a lot of volunteers to get our work done. So virtual versus in person, it's still the same kind of volunteer. So it's kind of setting things off with that.
Thank you, Anna. All right. Next, we have Yvonnia.
Hey everyone, I'm Yvonnia Bryant. I'm with Community Investment Collaborative, where we support entrepreneurs through education, mentoring, financing, and networking. And we also host a small business development center. So any entrepreneur needs, you can come see us. And the biggest way that we've been able to leverage Catchafire is for all of our, not all, but a lot of our marketing materials and projects. The biggest one has been our annual report. That's probably the largest and most heavy lifting print publication that we produce. And we use Catchafire Volunteer to design all of the annual report. I should have grabbed one so I can show y'all, but we've been very satisfied the 2 going on 3 years that we've been using them for our annual reports. And that's it.
Hi, Nicole.
Hello, how are you all? I wasn't sure if you were going to say something else. I didn't hear. So I will go ahead and start. My name is Nicole Hawker, and I am the founder and executive director of Heart and Soul Fitness. We are a nonprofit fitness studio located in Charlottesville. And I will say that I was one of those that felt like I did not have the capacity to take on one more thing by adding Catchafire to our to what we were doing. But I will say that Catchafire has been incredibly helpful, as it gave me the opportunity to network with some individuals to take a look at our website, our branding, some things that we were doing with social media, and then also having someone look at our mission statement. Everything, kind of made sense in my own brain, but then when I was able to step outside of myself and quite frankly, even step outside of our local community and get insight from individuals who were looking at our online presence from an external perspective, that was very impactful as well. So I would say, in the beginning it was, I don't have time for this, but then realizing I needed to make the time so that we could make sure that we were being able to go to that next level as we needed to.
Thank you. All right, Brenda.
Hi, I'm Brenda Patterson. I'm a co-founder and director of music of Victory Hall Opera. We are a tiny little experimental opera troupe here in Charlottesville, Virginia. So a lot of people hear opera and they imagine, a big budget, fancy thing, but we're kind of the opposite of that. We're like the scrappy little version of that. Which means that we have a tiny staff, a tiny budget. So Catchafire has been really helpful in many regards. I would say our most successful collaboration was redesigning our logo. We actually got 2 for 1 out of it. We also had to have an initiative called Sing Tank, which is an artist advocacy think tank run by opera singers. And the logo designer who worked with us in Catchafire designed the logo for Sing Tank as well. So we got 2 logos. And it was just a really great process. The man we worked with was a great collaborator. There was a lot of communication and back and forth and different drafts. And we were really, really happy with the work. It was very professional. He gave us a whole brand package. And I think having kind of a classier, more professional logo has helped us really, confer legitimacy and really clarify our brand to our audiences.
Love that. Thank you, Brenda. All right, well, we'll hop into our questions. I'm going to stop my share. And Brenda, I think you really kicked us off around, we want to hear more about what Catchafire projects were the most successful for you all. Anna, Yvonnia, Nicole, if you want to jump in on that as well. What was your biggest win with Catchafire, and sort of what brought you to that point?
I can share a little bit more on our annual report. So I grabbed a few out of my little storage bin. This one is from 2022. Y'all know annual reports can be a lot. There's a lot of data, a lot of information. In ours, we include stories of the entrepreneurs that we work with. So there's a lot of proofing and a lot of reading that comes along with it. So taking away the design component helps us a lot. I am one of the marketing people on the CIC team. Tara Farley, she's on the call now. It's just us 2 who are the marketing team, but we don't just do marketing. We have split roles. We do other things as well. So like I said, it really does help. This one is from 2023, last year.
It's beautiful.
can't really see, the lighting isn't that great, but as you can see, you can get a lot of different cool designs from the different volunteers that you work with. So if you can leverage it and outsource it, I say go for it so that you don't have to spend the time on it. Just be extremely clear in your direction. Be clear about what you want from the project. Be clear about your deadlines. And also be open to communication. There's a lot of back and forth that comes with it because a lot of the volunteers on Catchafire there are some in Charlottesville, but a lot of them are in other cities and in other states. So you have to avail yourself pretty much any time to ensure that you are getting the deliverable that you are looking for. And then now we're actually working on the 2024 one, and we're about to post on Catchafire again.
Ivania, I'm curious too, something that both Brenda and Nicole spoke to is like how that Catch a Fire project helped sort of take the organization, to the next level or have a real influence on their desired audiences. What have you seen with the annual report or any other Catch a Fire project where, that investment had really big returns?
So I would say the biggest is all of our key stakeholders. They receive these through the mail, but we also have a spring luncheon event. It's really a donor event that we host every year, and the annual report we showcase the annual report for the first time at the spring luncheons, and everybody always tells us how amazing it is and how much of an impact that we are making. So I would say the biggest takeaway or the biggest influence from the projects is really the impact on the community and just continuing to share what we do in our community. It's not about us, it's about all the entrepreneurs that we're able to help and who we're able to serve. So yeah, thank you.
We do have a question in the chat from Mary for you. Did you guys use the same volunteer for each year?
No. So for the 2022 one, we worked with a college student. So she worked on this one, and then we followed up with her again for the 2023 version, and she was not available. She went on to do other things. I think she might have gone to grad school, so she wasn't available. And so that's when we went on our search for other volunteers. So I think we'll probably end up working with the new one this year.
Something we'll come back to is how folks have been able to narrow their volunteer search and really find the right folks for the job. Awesome. So yeah, Anna, maybe I'll kick it to you. What was your biggest Catch a Fire success story, and how did it sort of have a bigger impact on your organization?
Sure. Well, so this is one that I felt was really important, but at the time didn't really, I didn't really think it would impact for so long, right? Like I knew that we would achieve the goal of the specific project, but I did not anticipate the return on the time that I put in. So right when the project started, I signed up for Catchafire to be part of the initial piece because I knew that Catchafire was a really strong platform. I'd seen it used in other places. And so one of the first things that I did, it's still, I started as the executive director of the Art Center in January of 2020. So with this very big goal of changing absolutely nothing, which actually sounds like I cursed everything, we had to kind of totally pivot this organization that is very small, but it's important to me personally and everyone in our community, and has been serving this area for 27 years. So it's like, on one hand, small organization, on the other hand, wow, this is deeply embedded. Like, think about all of the different routes that are going through that connect this organization to the people that we serve. And so one of the things, we did two things, and they both helped, but I'm going to give credit to one more than the other, which is first we did change management. So that was a huge one, just having somebody to talk to. I grew up in this area, and so I know my community. I can tell you, if anybody is familiar with Orange, you've probably, there's the good, the bad, and the orange, right? And so it can be very hard to get word out here. It can be very hard to get people to accept changes, no matter how small. You know, you will have a neighbor come up to you if you change your garbage can, not because it's wrong, but because they noticed it was different. So we did change management because I was a new executive director and we had nothing but change with the pandemic and everything else. At the same time, I saw that my board wasn't properly engaged. They were not able to respond to some very big and very different needs that we had because of the pandemic. And so we did a SWOT analysis. And as part of that, we had a volunteer.
Finally, you're kidding.
Hmm?
There's all kinds of stuff going on.
And so we did a SWOT analysis, and that enabled us to not only look at, you know, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, but also our mission statement and whether it was still reflecting the organization 27 years on. From that, we got a strategic plan. We had all of these other very important conversations with my board. And now in 2020, late 2023, we have updated our bylaws and done a lot of other work that really needed to be done. And all of that came from one, maybe two Catchafire projects that honestly, once I found the volunteer and communicated with them all in, I think that my time investment was about an hour. And then from there, it was having that person do the footwork and then talking directly to stakeholders like my board members to make sure that that work was effective. So really getting a strong handle on what we were trying to achieve and then letting the volunteer take it from there was a big help.
Thank you, Anna. And some conversation in the chat is also pointing to the benefits of the expert calls, where you can get on the phone with someone anywhere from, 10 to 60 minutes, and using that as a bit of an entry point to your projects. And Anna, I'm curious, for the change management, was that a call, a project, or a professional development like series?
Well, I think that technically it was under as a project, but what it manifested as was a weekly call, actually.
Mm.
So, and the way that we managed that was that I basically built it into my day. It was like, okay, every Tuesday at 9 a.m., I am going to have this phone call. This is part of my week, and then we, so it folded into the day rather than being an addition to the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Brenda and Nicole, you guys did already speak a bit about your biggest success stories, but is there anything more you want to say about the logo, the mission statement process with Catchafire, and sort of what brought you to that point?
Sure, I'll go next. I would, kind of going back to what I was saying as far as working with individuals that were not or are not local to Charlottesville, I did have an opportunity to work with a woman who was fairly close to Charlottesville and very connected to a lot of similar organizations. And that was helpful in that it increased networking opportunities. But to go back to working with individuals outside of the area, one of the gentlemen that I had opportunity to work with does a lot of work on, I'm trying to think of the word, like on a bigger scale as far as branding and marketing, and to be able to have access to someone who does bigger, broader work was also helpful because, again, it just gave me that opportunity to really think outside of my own box and to think outside of what I thought marketing and branding could and should look like, and to be able to take that and say, no, this can be done bigger and better. The other piece to that, and thinking about the networking piece, is just building those networks beyond my own small circle here in Charlottesville as well, and being able to have that network of individuals that are connected to nonprofits, connected to organizations outside of the region, outside of the area. And again, that helps in that long term, so that it goes beyond just marketing. It goes beyond just kind of the branding that we were working on. And it's building in additional networks for future opportunities as well.
I love that. The networking piece is really important. And networking with each other as well, which is a bit of what we're here to do today. Brenda?
Yeah, other than the logo project, I would say the majority of the projects that we did were more about skill building. So essentially just whether it was like a phone call or doing a few like training sessions, even in basic stuff, like I needed some Excel training. I like probably a lot of us had just kind of picked up Excel and never really, learned how to do it properly. And I found a great volunteer who had like taught that at colleges. And so he designed a whole little like mini curriculum for me and a staff member, and he gave us homework, and he, really designed it around our needs. So that was super helpful. I do have to say, we did have a bit of a mixed experience in terms of the quality of volunteers. I had pretty much all good experiences. I had another colleague who had kind of a few negative experiences and therefore kind of wrote off the thing. I think, and I don't know, I think sometimes there's a bit of luck of the draw, right? I mean, obviously the quality of the volunteers varies because they're people. I think I might have been a little more rigorous in terms of kind of vetting them. Like I would research their professional websites, look at their work, look at their resumes, reject people who, if they were like, hey, I'm volunteering for your project and they didn't feel right to me, I'd say like, no, sorry. And I think that's good to keep in mind. Don't feel obligated, like just because someone has raised their hand to volunteer for you, like you don't have to sign with that person. There's no hard feelings. If you think they're not right, they're not right. I tended to go more towards people who are a little bit older. I just like people that have a little more experience, I guess. But yeah, I would say our experience varied a little bit. We all run nonprofits here, I guess, so we're familiar with sort of the problem of the volunteers who just kind of want to do what they want to do, not what you need. And so we had a little bit of that sometimes where, like, here's the project, here's what we need. And they'd sort of be like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not really interested in doing that. I want to do this other thing. And we're like, but that's, again, those were the exception. Overall, it was a great experience, but just keep that in mind. Like the quality varies.
Mm-hmm. And a reminder maybe to not be discouraged by a singular, bad experience. But you gave some great tips, Brenda. Ivania, I did want to come back to you on this question as well. Having worked on essentially the same kind of project with, 2 or 3 different volunteers, what was your process for, ensuring volunteer quality, and making sure the outputs were what you wanted them to be?
Sure. Yes. So similar to Brenda, I think we interviewed at least 2, maybe 3 volunteers just to make sure they had the time to commit to such a large project. And also I'm looking at their resumes. If they have their social media linked, I want to see all of the work that they've done because I want to know that whatever is going to be produced for my organization is going to be of high quality because it is, again, it's going out to our donors, our volunteers, our other clients. So yeah, I would suggest looking at any linked portfolios, profiles, social media, specifically for design. There are a lot of different things that you can use Catchafire for, but that's what I've used it mostly for. So yeah, look at all of their links and then ask those questions like, do you have experience in Canva? Do you have experience in Photoshop or whatever platforms you are looking for them to work in? So be very, very direct in your vetting process. And also, I want to add, similar to Brenda, I worked with a volunteer very, very briefly. We were looking to have him design some t-shirt designs for us. And I'm like, hey, like he sent me like the first proof of it. And I'm like, hey, can you change this? And he's like, actually, no, I don't have any more time for this. So that was like the only like bad experience I've had. I probably could have been a little bit more clear in what I was looking for and what the time commitment could have looked like for that particular project. But like after the first proof, he was like, no, I don't have any more time for this. You should probably find another volunteer. And I was like, oh, okay, that's different. So just be selective, as Brenda suggested as well.
I think that raises for me too, something for everyone here. If you are having a challenging experience with a volunteer, please do share that with me. And that's something that, we can take on to Catchafire a bit as well as a continuous sort of feedback loop. I think sometimes when, these less than amazing experiences happen with volunteers, you just sort of move on. But it is really good feedback for us to get so that we can either course correct or, try to help their platform improve too. But something else that comes up from what y'all are saying is it does sound like a lot of work to go through and, vet and check links and review resumes and interview people. And we did see in the poll that one of the sticking points was that folks feel like they don't have the time to like manage a volunteer. I am curious. I mean, I think one of the big takeaways is the return on investment is good. It can be really high. It might be worth, those few hours of time. But do you all have any other tips or tricks for, sort of making the most of the experience and or really being efficient with that sort of volunteer management time? Anyone can jump in. Thanks, Anna.
So I will say that small organization, I get it, right? Like we don't have enough time. And I'm also really big in my organization. Like I don't care what somebody's job is or what the title is. Everybody is responsible in their way for the success of the mission and the organization. Everybody's got a piece of the pie. That includes volunteers, virtual or in person. And so one of the questions I ask myself when I do these things, especially with Catchafire, it is going to take time, right? We are looking for a good return on the investment of my time. And I think to myself, what should the executive director be doing today? Right? Like this is a question I think maybe people who get into leadership don't ask themselves enough. You have your priorities, you have your goal that you need to achieve, but you also need to be up at that 60,000 foot going, is this actually going to work? Right? And I look at these things as an opportunity for professional development. Yes, the Excel training, I will absolutely echo. I've made every single person and some of my board members actually do the Excel training. So many people think they know how to use Excel. We don't. We really don't. Okay, take the Excel training. The world will open up before you. That's an immediate one right there. But for these bigger projects, it's also, I need to be able to interview people, right? Like we're hearing all this about how like it was hard to find the right volunteer. That's interviewing skill. That's, being able to discern whether somebody's going to actually be able to carry the ball across the finish line is a big thing to be able to tell by asking just a few questions. So I look at it that way. So that's not lost time. That's something I should be good at. That's something I should be doing. And it's something I should be giving my team the opportunity to learn as well. And when they make a mistake, training time, right? And so obviously it needs to be kept like, it needs to be not too much time, but there is an appropriate investment to make in your team and their skills. So that's one consideration. The other one is, again, what should the executive director be doing today? So what should, the senior staff person be doing? And so I think that to maximize use of Catchafire, a smart strategy really is to see it as this skill building tool. Even when you're not trying to necessarily build that particular skill, it will happen. Also, it really should, there are some projects that really need to be decided on by senior staff. And so I even had a couple that were helping people in the professional development side who weren't great with time management. Recent graduates don't necessarily know how to split up their day. And they don't necessarily want to hear it from their boss, right? Then you're the micromanager who's telling them, don't do that, don't use that word, blah, blah, blah. No one wants to be there. And so some of the projects, they interview the volunteers. Sometimes even for projects like time management, we've identified this weakness mutually. We've talked about it. We've decided we're going to use Catchafire as our tool to help us get over this hurdle. Well, I know that my team member has a hard time with time management. Why would I put time management on their plate while they're trying to learn it? So that's one that I actually do from my account, and I work with the volunteer to make sure that the training is actually happening. And so while the staff member is the one doing the project, all of the reporting is coming back to me. Is this working? And I have had projects that I either extended with the volunteer by talking to them separately or said, this isn't working. We need a new volunteer. Thanks for trying to help out. We're going to find somebody else. And so then it's folding into my management flow, not an extra thing. And that's been kind of the way that I focus on it all the time. How does this fold into what I would be doing better to maximize my attention's value on this project?
Love that. Brenda?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to that, which is, I think sometimes we forget how motivating it is to staff to employees to be gaining skills and learning on the job. I think seeing that not as a burden or like an extra ask on them, but I mean, we found it was that specific aspect, right? People really responded really well to being offered free training in something, felt like an opportunity. It felt empowering, I think. Yeah. And also I think people, they feel seen by it in a way because it's like, oh, you respect the fact that like, you know, you're investing in my learning, right? In my growth. And yeah, I think it can be motivating.
Nicole. Thank you, Brenda.
So I want to kind of add just a different perspective. As I am the executive director, I am the staff member, I am the housekeeper, I am all the things. So I don't have great staff members that I can kind of divvy things out to. And so that has actually been one of the pluses for having Catchafire, is because I wear just about all of those hats at every other hour of the day, as do I'm sure many of the other, 50 plus people on this screen. There may be, 5 or 6 that are kind of in the same boat with me. And so I would just like to encourage you all to consider how Catchafire can kind of add to your ability to wear those multiple hats, because there may be times when, as the executive director, there are things that you have to take care of that you can't necessarily take care of in your staff member role or in your, whatever your other roles are. And so Catchafire is one of those opportunities to be able to come alongside you and help to carry some of that burden for you. So for example, I kind of go back to social media. I am wearing all these other hats, but I have to keep up social media. I'm wearing all of these other hats and I have to look at marketing. And so Catchafire comes alongside of me and is able to help me develop what our social media plan is going to look like. It helps me to develop what are some other things that we can do with our newsletter, or just whatever that other thing is outside of what I need to be focused on for that moment. And so, so I think it's great that Catchafire is able to help with, as we build out our staff, as we build out our organization, we will be able to incorporate Catchafire in that way. But especially for those of you who are like myself, you are the person who's, responsible for all the things. Catchafire is incredibly helpful in that you have volunteers who will be able to come alongside you and carry some of that weight for you and with you.
That's great to hear. We only have a few minutes left. Time flies. I do want to give folks an opportunity to ask any questions of our wonderful panel today. Feel free to just come off of mute or put anything in the chat. In the meantime, I'll summarize a few of the takeaways and what I've heard over the past 20 minutes or so. Yeah, I think a big takeaway is that an investment in volunteer sort of like management can lead to greater returns, but understanding that it is something that you should commit yourself to in order to make sure you have a quality volunteer, a quality output. And once again, I'm a resource for that. If folks are trying to figure out how to pick the right volunteer, trying to figure out how to, post your project correctly, happy to, hop on a call and support you there. I think we're seeing too that, volunteers can be can kind of help be staff or fill in some of that capacity directly, or volunteers can help support your staff and help them with their growth and professional development. In the email, you'll get the slide deck and it'll have a walkthrough of how to go to the professional development modules. So the Excel one, a lot of folks mentioned, everybody do the Excel training. But those are sort of like packages of projects that come together to help you do something bigger, such as create a business plan or create a marketing strategy. There's about 16 professional development options that folks can go through. And we'll also, show folks how to do the one-on-one calls, which came up in the chat as a really easy entry point. You may not be ready to manage a volunteer, but if you have 45 minutes to get on a call with somebody and ask some questions and take it from there, that's also something that's being offered by Catchafire. No questions at the moment. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I mean, in our last couple minutes, do our panelists have anything else to add or share?
I'll add something really quickly.
Mhm.
I would like to say I am not the only staff member that uses Catchafire at CIC. I think there's maybe 3 or 4 of us who use it for different reasons. So for me, it's marketing. I think another team member, Juana, who's on the call now, she uses it for some professional development. When like before we finished this, we were planning. This says CIC 10. This was for our 10-year anniversary event that we had in 2022. We actually use a separate volunteer to help us with the actual event planning of the event. So I just want to put it out there that there are so many different projects and so many different ways and resources that you can use Catchafire. So please take advantage of it. And if you have to have different team members do different things, do that because it's super helpful.
That's a great point.
And I just wanted to add one other thing because I realized through our conversation that, you know, we have so many different people coming from so many different backgrounds, and you end up in nonprofits and you do this very specialized work. Well, I will say that one of my first introductions to Catchafire was actually when I was still in school. And a lot of the like design stuff and things like that, kind of to speak to some of the challenges that I think people have. You have students and people who are graduating or just graduated, and they need to add to their portfolio. And that is where you're actually most likely to see that I don't have time for this project. I wanted to do this, and now I don't have time to do it. And that's because it was an assignment. So sometimes asking that question, why are you volunteering on Catchafire, will give you the answer. And if they say communication skills may not be where you need them to be as a professional, they're a student, right? So they might be doing this just for an assignment to build their portfolio. They have a goal in mind for themselves as well. And where you guys are coming together on a shared mission, the shared project, that's great. But the second they no longer have that assignment, or maybe they get a job, or maybe they take that next step, they're not available. So just making sure that you're not, if you don't need a student, don't deal with one, you know, and that you get the correct level volunteer and that those priorities are in the place that you both need them to be.
Excellent advice. Thank you all. This was great. I learned a lot as well. Folks in the chat have asked for contact information. So once I get sort of permission from everybody, I'll be able to share, and you can connect directly to our panelists, to each other, continue conversations, and continue supporting each other on Catchafire. Nicole, she posted hers there. Great. Yeah, we're wrapping up. Thanks everyone for joining, and very excited to meet you all. I'll be following up via email, and yeah, I'm here to support. Thanks everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you all. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
one.
Bye folks.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye everyone.